I'm Dr. Debbie Lanes, and I am here today representing Hospice Care of the Low Country. And it's really been interesting. Hospice Care of the Low Country has had many opportunities to present community affiliates. And today we're going to talk a little bit about nursing homes. And I put that in quotes because I think one of the things we're going to try to do is to bust some myths and really add some wonderful information about two particular programs that are out there right now. I'd like to introduce to you my friend Lynn King for 30 years, and also with Tide Point, let me say that, and Lindsay Edwards is with Vineyard. I would love you each to introduce yourselves, a little bit about your background, and just sort of a broad overview of each of your entities. And so Lindsay, let me go ahead and start with you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate getting to talk a little bit more about Vineyard Assisted Living and memory care and what we offer and bring to the Low Country. I am the Community Relations Director here at Vineyard. I've been here about 1.5 years now. And my role here is to really form relationships with the community, but also with current residents and those potential residents that are looking for a place where they just need a little bit more care than what they're able to do on their own at home, or even in a more straightforward, independent type community.
That makes so much sense. And we're going to get into depth about exactly what services are available and what kind of living options are available at Vineyard. But again, Thank you for that overview. And Lynn?
Well,
from Tide Point.
Debbie, we've known one another for almost 40 years. That's a little scary. It's a little scary.
Wow.
1983, I think you're one of the first people that I met. But I'm with Tide Point, and specifically Broad Creek Care Center. Tide Point is a continuing care community that kind of takes the place of nursing homes and retirement communities, the word retirement communities. Continuing care communities can have various levels of care. At Tide Point, we have independent living. You've probably heard of people living at Tide Point. They literally own their own real estate, and then they get the amenities of the Tide Point community, the spas, the fitness centers, the fabulous dining, the activities programs, and those kind of things. The care center, Broad Creek Care Center, offers 2 levels of care. We are a dual facility, so we're licensed for 25 Medicare beds for rehab, and we also have 50 assisted living apartments. I'm thrilled to know that, Lindsay has the memory care. We've actually just talked offline about the fact that we actually have people that have gone there. We do not have memory care. Tide Point's coming up on their 25th anniversary. So the care center has been around for nearly 25 years. Unfortunately, we don't have the memory care. We do have residents with deficits, cognitive deficits, but just not needing that higher level.
What I'd love to do is sort of go back to both of you. And again, this can be an exchange with all 3 of us, because I think, and you said this as we were practicing or talking a little bit ahead of time, the word rest home is something I grew up with, and nursing home is something I grew up with. And my mom and dad were terrified of that. I think the more you all have taught me and the more educated we become as a population, the more it sounds like an amazing thing. Lindsay, can you tell us from Vineyard, what is skilled nurse? And both of you together, if you'd like, what is skilled nursing? What is memory care? What are living options? Lynn, one of the things that you already said that was really interesting is you own your own real estate. Wow, who knew that that was even an option out there? So Lindsay, I'm going to start with you, and then please interject, and let's start with opportunities available in each of your facilities.
Sure. So really, when it comes to with our community, it is a month-to-month rent. So instead of like a buy-in, which is your, as she was talking, more of like an apartment, like a retirement, you're moving down, you're owning your own apartment, place. We're kind of the next step after that ownership, where we're kind of the availability where they can move in. It's rent, it's just month to month. They can, we provide the care they need. So what that means is they can come in with really fairly, we call it personalized living here. Okay, so it's
living.
Care of all their meals. We're doing laundry once a week. We're doing the housekeeping once a week. We can do transportation for them. But then if they need assistance with showering, with dressing, with medications, we provide that care. We have 24-hour care here within the community. And then
So
yes.
let me interrupt for 1 second. So what I hear you say is Vineyard is an apartment-like living. So I would come, I mean, I'm 67 and Lynn, I'm kind of interested in all of this right now. So Lindsay, so I would come in, I would rent an apartment. Are they a la carte services at that point?
They are. In assisted living, they are. Now with memory care, it's all included. The care and their apartment month-to-month rent is all included, because we understand there are some just care needs that are just part of the dementia, so we don't a la carte that as much.
So here's what I'd like to ask, and Lynn, help me out here, and both of you together. Can you actually define the difference between independent living, assisted living, skilled living, apartment living? Because I think that becomes.
Yep, I'm happy to.
Yes, that would be great, Lynn. I was going to say, you go with that. You start on your level and then I can chime in.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, guys. All right, Lynn.
Yeah. This is something that, Lindsay and I both do, I'm sure, as we're meeting with prospects and talking to people in the community. The way I define it is skilled nursing is the highest level of care outside of the hospital. And with that comes a rehab component or either a long-term skilled nursing need. The people that are in skilled nursing require a high level of 24/7 nursing care, oversight with their medical needs. They come to us from the hospital for rehab purposes, or either they have long-standing medical issues and they need to stay in skilled nursing. Assisted living means you need minimum to moderate assistance with your activities of daily living. Lindsay and I refer to them as ADLs, but it's activities of daily living. And that is your bathing, your dressing, your meal. Excuse me?
Which include what you were getting to?
Yeah, so assisted living is those components. We have 24/7 nursing in obviously skilled. We have 24/7 nursing in assisted living. Some people come and they need very little help with their ADLs, but maybe they were terrible managers of their medications at home. They were extreme fall risk. They couldn't be safe in the event of an evacuation or emergency in their home. Their families are absentee, and so the kids are always worrying about listening to the lifeline, trying to figure out what's happening with mom, why she's not answering her phone. The security of knowing that she's got an apartment in an assisted living facility where she's got constant supervision, not somebody sitting, right by her bedside, in her space. She can have her own belongings, her own apartment, but she's got that 24-hour supervision there. The meals, the activities, the socialization is a big part of assisted living. There's a financial component. If you're at home and you're having 24-hour care, and there's some wonderful caregiving companies everywhere, but in our community, there's wonderful caregiving companies. But it becomes a fine line as to what price are you paying financially and socially to have someone be at home with 24-hour care. You're paying a lot of money. They're isolated. They don't have the activities and the socialization. So a lot of times that and the evacuation factor become a reason I think we find that people decide to look at assisted living.
Mm-hmm. And then the third piece for Tide Point, you have the independent, correct? The independent living, Lynn?
Yeah, the independent, and those models in CCRCs differ. Yeah, independent living, our model differs from the rest of our V living communities in the fact that Tide Point is a fee simple property. The members at Tide Point own their own homes. They own a villa, they own a cottage, they own a veranda. And then there's much like people who live at a club and they're members of a club, Tide Point is the club that has the amenities for those members, the fine dining, the activities, a wellness program, security, fitness, lifestyle. And so Tide Point members, being part of a CCRC, a Tide Point member has priority coming into the Broad Creek Care Center. If a Tide Point member's in the hospital and needs a skilled nursing bed, they go over someone in the community. If assisted living is the transitional component of that Tide Point member's lifestyle, they no longer can live independently without, a great deal of outside care, then they transition into assisted living. So we have members that actually come in and out and various levels. They can come in and out several times. It just doesn't mean you go from independent to skilled to assisted. We have them moving throughout the levels of care as their needs, become apparent.
Makes a lot of sense. Hey,
Yeah,
Lindsay,
and to play off that, that's similar to how our personalized living, assisted living into memory care is, because like Lynn said, there are residents that can live in assisted living with some dementia. As we age, the brain ages too. So they can easily come into in our assisted living with a different level of care. And then as we see or as they feel, our programming and memory care, which is a very cognitive focused programming, is more beneficial, then they get first priority being a Vineyard resident already for memory care.
let me ask you then about transitioning into memory care. What services are available, and what would constitute someone who would go into memory care?
Okay.
Lindsay, that's for you.
Yes, typically there is a diagnosis of some form of dementia. As we all know, dementia is a very fluid. There's a variety of different, yes, so much. So, it's a diagnosis that there is some type of cognitive loss, but also security. The security, where it kind of differentiates between assisted living in assisted living with some cognitive impairment. If there is a fear that they will leave the community and not know where they're at, our memory care community is a secured community where they can walk around, they have their own courtyard, they can enjoy their environment without the risk of them leaving the community, not knowing where they're at. But it's also a great structure. We feel that, and we have found that those with dementia really do well with structure. They can get up in the morning, they have breakfast, they get a routine. We do activities such as exercises starting at 10:30. We go into something like, and those phrases, like great balls of, and everyone can kind of guess fire, for example. They go on trips to Italy, Germany. We talk about places that they've been. There's using that mind, the memories, what they've done 20 years ago. And some days that's where they're at today. So we kind of embrace where they are. Their lunches at noon, their dinners at 5. So they get to go on outings, which is even within our COVID regulations. We've been able to take them at least on the bus to just drive around and see the ocean. So we just get them more in a structured routine that really benefits them cognitively, because we want them to stay where they are in their cognitive
Ability.
Yes, and their abilities before they kind of decrease.
Can I ask both of you, who are the demographics for each of you? At 67, and my parents just passed away, my dad at 93, and I'm just curious as who your clientele are. Who do you hope your clientele are? And how do you, from an education point of view, I feel like you all are really debunking myths of what senior care facilities really look like. So Lynn, I'll go back to you for that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had Tide Point members make the decision to come to assisted living because they're 100. We've got 104-year-olds living in assisted living, 103-year-olds living in assisted living. I think our median age somewhere in our care center is probably 88. 89 is probably our average age. Our clientele or our prospects, as we would look at them, actually are the Debbie Lines of the world. It's the children that are starting to have to deal with, parental situations, much like Debbie, I've had care issues with my parents who were Tide Point members. And I think our clientele or our demographic is actually the children that are having to be trying to make decisions to help their parents be in a safe environment. Lindsay alluded to the safety factor. I alluded to a lot of times the transitional fact for people coming into to Broad Creek Care Center has to do with safety, and awareness, and we do not have a locked memory care unit. We weren't built that way 25 years ago, and we can't reconfigure that. Our residents with cognitive deficits are able to deal in our environment because they're not a safety or an elopement risk. As Lindsay alluded to, if we're concerned that someone would go out of our community to sit on the front porch, as our residents do, and end up, deciding to walk off and not know to come back, then we've got some concerns that we're not the right community for them. So their safety and their awareness of where they are and their dignity issues is a lot of things with memory care, because if someone doesn't really realize that their memory is that impaired, then they may be wandering into someone else's room. They can't participate in our activities that are not designed for that memory care person. So that's kind of the difference, I think.
So Lindsay and Lynn, for both of you, do you have assessments? I guess, I don't know if that's the right word, but are there ways that you can assist the Lynns and the Debbies of the world in deciding which level of care is more appropriate, and even ways of telling my mom and dad or whatever why it's beneficial, or helping them make that transition? For either one of you. Do you want to? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so very much so. We do all, that's part of the process. And as Lynn and I both, we get to know the families, get to jump into understanding who they are and who their loved one is and the needs that they need. We provide here at Vineyard, our nurse will actually do an assessment based off physical needs. And that's really based off of the potential resident, the future resident, has much input as we do in that relationship, and understanding what their expectations are, what their care needs are. And then also when it comes to the memory care side of it, our dementia resource director will be part of that assessment as well. So we know where they are cognitively, so we can shape the programs for that individual around her needs and her specific cognitive level.
And how about Lynn, for you all, same kind of assessments? Or I know you are.
As Lindsay says, I'll meet the family. They'll either call or we'll meet, or they're referred to us from somebody, and we'll have those conversations. But we start out with the physician's assessment. They go to see their primary care doctor. We have paperwork that doctor is then able to give us a medical history of the person and their interpretation of that person's needs. We start with that, and then prior to COVID, when it was easier to do this, then once our nursing staff and our therapy staff gets the physical, the history and physical from the primary care doc, the family and the resident, potential resident, comes in, and that's when our nurse can sit down and, based on that history and physical and that medical documentation, is able to follow up with questions and lifestyle issues and things like that, so that we can start trying to figure out the plan of care that this person actually needs. Do they fit the assisted living model? Or if we're able to determine that the diagnoses are there and the behaviors are there that would show us that they're not going to be successful in a straight assisted living level, then rather than have them come in and not be successful at that, we're helping those families with other options, trying to help them find memory care options so that their family member can be, as much as we can hope, get to the right level of care and be successful.
Lindsay, I saw you nodding.
Yes, and I also wanted to talk through that. You're exactly right. So, it's one of those, the other thing I wanted to talk about, because you had mentioned kind of the goal in who our kind of demographic is. I think, and it's probably just on the same page as me on this end, is, help trying to promote those younger individuals that aren't 100 coming before they come into assisted living, but in the 80s at least, where it's before the fall happened, it's before a scenario happened, that we want them to feel comfortable in our communities. And I think that is a goal, my personal goal here at Vineyard is to help promote, get those family members, those adult children, even while I'm talking to those adult children, we're doing assessments, we're doing all of that for their loved one, explaining how our community benefits them, not so much right this minute, but maybe in 5 years from now where, it's not, it's before, I saw that your finger went up. So, it's before.
Oh, no, that just means I have a thought and
Okay.
when you're
Yeah.
finished, I have a follow-up to that. It's like,
Yeah, because I think it's something that I think it would be really beneficial for our community now or for our demographic now to understand how we can benefit, especially being month to month or, benefit them in the long run sooner.
It's really interesting. And I think the more you guys talk, the more you two are talking, the more
Well,
questions I'm coming as a consumer as well as for my parents. And Lynn, one of the things that you said, community and lifestyle. I would love to have both of you talk about your community, the Tide Point community and the Vineyard community, and how important that is from a philosophy point of view. All right. And then when you talk about lifestyle and activities, what does that look like, or what can that look like?
Well, the interesting thing that Lindsay just said is absolutely true. I'll be working with families, particularly if we're trying to transition someone, let's say, from an independent living situation to the center. You don't want to miss the opportunity to avail yourself of the quality of life that assisted living can afford you before a significant event, as we call it, sends you to the hospital. I can be working with someone where the mom's not quite ready, the children aren't ready to kind of push that envelope for mom to come to assisted living. They're kind of band-aided at home with trying to figure out how to put enough care in place to keep mom safe. And the next thing I know, I get a call from that family and mom has had a fall and she's now in the hospital, broken hip. And so now she's going to have to come for rehab. And we hope that the significant event isn't enough to deter her from being able to come to assisted living. So the benefit for us is having the dual levels of care. We may get someone who had been considering assisted living. They come through our skilled rehab. We have outstanding rehab on site. So they get the rehab to get able to go to assisted living, and the transition sometimes is much easier on the family and the individual to do that. So they've already seen us, they know us, and whether you're in assisted living or skilled, our personnel is the same. So they feel familiar. They know the therapist, and they're going to continue working with those therapists in assisted living just like they did in skilled. So a lot of times that is the transition, as sad as that seems. That it takes that kind of an event for us to actually have the person come to us. In Lindsay's situation, she's absolutely right. She wants them to be able to appreciate what they're going to get in assisted living and not miss that opportunity, because if they miss that opportunity with a significant enough event, then they're going to find themselves looking for a higher level of care. Lifestyle, pre-COVID and COVID are quite different. Pre-COVID, you come and go, your family can come pick you up, you go home for the weekend, you can go traveling with them, you go out to dinner or lunch with your kids. They can bring the whole family in, can have a family dinner with us, with their resident. Our activities program is taking our residents out into the community for lunches. They go to the Jazz Corner. They go on trips to the Coastal Discovery Museum. Our Tide Point members take mystery trips every month. They literally don't know where they're going, but they sign up to fill the buses to go on these trips, anywhere from Savannah to Telfair, to the Frank Lloyd Wright home, to Beaufort, to the Bay. So lifestyle is unique for any level of care. Our skilled residents have a tremendous amount of social lifestyle activities. So while someone says, oh, that's so sad, they're in skilled nursing, for the rest of their years, it's not so much that. They've got 24-hour care. They've got people who are trying to personalize socialization for them, their interest. During COVID, we've had FaceTime calls constantly and Zoom calls with family all around. Some of our residents have actually seen their families more in COVID because we're embarking on this new world of Zoom like we are today. So lifestyle, I think, is an important component of going into a level of care. And I know Lindsay has to agree with that, because that's one of the focal points of her community when it opened up, offering those levels of care.
Exactly.
So Lindsay,
Yeah, so when with lifestyle at Vineyard, it really what's different about here it's Life Your Way, which we actually create a lot of our activities, our food and everything around what our residents actually want. We do an assessment prior to. Yes, there's that physical assessment, but we actually do a Life Your Way assessment where we ask them what they like, what they don't like, and we create that. We give it to the chef, we give it to our life enrichment director, and it's really cool to see kind of what our marketing menu was and our marketing event calendar was, and to see what it is today, which has been morphed into what our current residents actually love and enjoy. You know, the bocce ball that they're out there, and our resident who moved in last week has won twice already. She never played bocce ball, before. So it's neat to see what has been really morphed from what what the concept was to really what Life Your Way at Vineyard is. And what's great too is, yes, we have those levels of care, but hospice can come into, so Life Your Way at Vineyard is it, and same thing with Lynn, they can live their life out. And if, when hospice is needed, especially with memory care, our side of memory care, there is aspects to dementia that there is a point sometimes, depending on where they are, where hospice is needed, just as a little bit of an assistance. And so that's something that we love to be able to welcome those type of care partners into the community.
And I think that's a beautiful way of saying it. And I know, Lynn, you and I have talked about this, hospice care of the Low Country, and hospice is a great way for palliative care. And I'm sure you all embrace that too, Lynn.
Well, yes, we do. We do not. We do not have a lot of people think as a skilled nursing facility, maybe we have our own in-house hospice. We don't. It's a family choice. It's a resident choice. I can say proudly that hospice care of the Low Country is the first choice for most of our families that I've dealt with over the 14 years that I've been there. Debbie, you're right. We respect the fact that hospice is a service. While our nurses can provide palliative care, and while we have a social worker that can provide those kind of things, hospice care of the Low Country brings in a higher level of one-on-one with the family. They can help the family understand the disease process. It's extra, I call it like icing on a cake. We're the bakers and we're baking the cake, and hospice services can often be the icing on top of that. It just kind of encapsulates everything that we do. They have music programs, they have pet therapy. They've got a bevy of volunteers that come in and out of our facility. We're anxious to get back to that. Actually, we started our outside visitation yesterday, and there were 3 hospice volunteers that came to visit some of our residents. So hospice is something I think also in that rest home, nursing home, vernacular that we were all, raised with. Hospice does not mean that you're, shutting the blinds and life's over. Hospice is just a way to embrace that period of someone's life when they, when they are in fact transitioning and they need that extra support. But I find it most important, the support most important, I think, is for the family or the survivors.
Very much.
I'll tell you, I can't think of a better way to end this discussion with all 3 of us. I think, Lynn, you've been articulate. Lindsay, it's such a pleasure. You've said so many important things. And I think actually, Darlene, who's in the background, is just saying, girls, you 2 are amazing. And I think you clarified a lot of things for a lot of people. You really are. And can I just say, I feel like you're user friendly. I feel like you've made me less hesitant to come in and chat. And I think what I hear you all say is that don't be afraid to come in and talk. You've got lots of information. There's lots of education available. There's something for everyone. And here's the most important part for me. I hear a lot of collaboration. You're going to be looking for the right fit for your resident. So on that note, Lynn King, Lindsay Edwards, thank you so much. We thank all of you for joining us here today for Hospice Care Halo.
Thank you so much. We appreciate
right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.